Hello, world. Here with me today on Radically Transparent is a vivacious and tenacious B2B marketing leader, best known for his wildly successful, innovative ideas and his extremely relatable, engaging, and educational posts on LinkedIn. Please join me in welcoming Rick Haring, VP Marketing at International SOS. And I have one question for you, Rick, right now. Are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
I am all in, Jen, all in.
I love it. I've been counting down to this episode, truth be told. Your personality, the many times we've spoken, we've chatted about employee advocacy. You're just always so full of life. So I'm super pumped to learn more about you and your secrets, if you will share them with us. But I figured we'd start off with maybe a little radically transparent light, if you will. And I was curious to know, if, a little bit more about your professional journey and how you actually found yourself at International SOS, and more importantly for us, right? How did you get into the world of marketing and, your VP? What does that look like? Can you dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this as well. I mean, your show is so fun, and I think you do such a great job. So I was really excited when you asked me to join. So thanks for that. So my journey is a little kind of roundabout, I'd say. How I don't come from the insurance or assistance business at all, and have no experience in that area. So I started my career in the telecom space, actually, a company called Bell Atlantic, which many of you may know now as Verizon, the big conglomerate in telecom. There are tons of roles there. I started actually out in the field,
Okay.
managing installation technicians there,
Okay.
yeah, which was kind of cool. And then, just had a number of different experiences within the company through degrees of increased responsibility. So from the field, I went into finance. I spent some time in the sales organization, in our IT group, rolling through there. And then the last 9 or so years there in marketing. So that's where I really developed and honed a lot of the skills that I still leverage today. I ran our site operations on the website, did our social channel strategy and execution there for several years, and did a ton of paid media and brand advertising there for Verizon. So great experience and great company and times there. 2016, I
Okay.
started to,
I have to ask.
yeah, please.
I have to ask because for me, there's one commercial that Verizon did that has stuck with me my
Oh,
entire life.
it is the
Can
lynch.
you hear me? Can you hear
Can you
me
hear me
now?
now? Yes, it's the lynch. I'd love to say that I actually came up with that, but
Is that
uh,
you?
being radically transparent, I had nothing to do with that.
Okay. Oh, okay.
The best though, and everybody still uses it today, right? It was brilliant, I think, from a marketer's perspective. Um, so 2016, I then kind of, looked at wanting to do and get a change. I feeling a little burned out. Had a great run at Verizon, but needed a change. And I didn't climb any mountains or do any Buddha type moments, but I did do a lot of self reflection on kind of what I wanted to be doing next in my career. And I landed on two things. One, I wanted to be in a different industry. I was somewhat at the time felt like I was being pigeonholed into this kind of telecom guy.
Yep.
And I wanted to get into a smaller organization. There's still a lot of fat at a big company like Verizon, and really wanted to kind of take what I had learned there and really hone in and own some pretty big projects there at the next level. So I was fortunate enough. I was approached by the owners of the New Jersey Devils, believe it or not, which is a
Okay.
professional hockey team
That's where
in
I'm
New
from.
Jersey.
New
And
Jersey.
I'm a Jersey guy as well. So my roots, I went back to them, and I took the role there. So it was fun. I mean, sports marketing is a completely different animal, and but I did get to really reinvent, the kind of processes and top to bottom how we actually marketed to the audience there, own social, back end CRM, all of the integrations and work there. So a lot of fun, for 3 seasons
Wow.
there. But it's a grind, Jen. I mean, it's a grind. Like, hockey is 82 games. You have 41 at home. And then I was actually, working in the venue marketing as well. So I was never home. And, that was tough with, I have two daughters who are getting older and I wanted to spend, time with them. So, hence how I got here. I was not looking really to move, but I was approached by some folks here at International SOS, and they said, "Hey, look, you have the right things that we're looking for, and we would really like to have you here." And I'd never heard of the company before, Jen. I had no idea what they did, but I started researching what they do, and I mean, I don't know how you don't fall in love with the mission of this company. I mean, they
So
literally save people's
can you
lives.
like let's dive into that for a moment because
Yeah,
I mean I'm sure many people listening in, I know International SOS has become pretty known, but
yeah,
still I think a lot of listeners may not know exactly what it is. So can you
yeah.
explain a little bit about what is International SOS and then what value are you bringing to your clients?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, it's funny, and when you think about the value we bring, right? I think often about that old scenario, and with COVID, right? We're back to it. You couldn't do it for a while. You go to your barbecue, right? And at the barbecue at Verizon, I was always afraid to say what we did, right? Because people hated the company, right? It was like I literally got my mom onto my telephone service, right, and paid for her, cell phone because I just didn't want to hear her complain about Verizon, right? And then I went to the Devils, and like you naturally will have people that hate you just because of sports, right? It's like, oh, you're with the Devils, right? I'm a Rangers fan, I'm a Flyers fan. So I don't have that problem here. I mean, I go to a barbecue now and I'm like, I'm with International SOS, and they're like kind of like what you did. Well, what's that
Yeah.
exactly?
Right?
And I'm like, well, we're, a global leader in health and security assistance services for you. And they're like, well, that sounds interesting, but what does that mean exactly? And, then you have to break it down. You're like, well, hey, listen, if you're traveling someplace for your company and like stuff goes down and you get in trouble, we're the ones that bail you out. We're there for you. And they're like, oh, that's amazing.
Genius.
Oh, I think my company might have you guys. And I'm like, yeah, probably do. We have a lot of you. So that's what we do, and it's pretty exciting, and it's very rewarding to really hear some of the ways that we help keep our clients healthy, safe, and productive. I mean, it's a lot of good work.
It's fantastic work. It's needed work, but I'm sure, and especially the year that was 2020, and still today, with COVID, I know, you know, maybe even coming back in some places. I'm sure there are things keeping you up at night, even though it's a super great place to work. Could you share with us a little about what's keeping you up at night professionally these days?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot, and it changes every night, I think. But the last couple of months, the thing that really kind of keeps me up at night the most is really thinking about my team. I think, COVID has been interesting for everyone, I think, right? But I think for us in this industry, especially, I've noticed it with my team, and I'm concerned, just about, their state of health and their mental awareness and mental health and how they're doing. And so, I believe that the next 6 months, frankly, are probably going to be, if not as important or more important than the past 15 months that we've gone through here. And, so I'm doing whatever I can with my team and the things that I can control to really ensure that, they're motivated, they're staying healthy, they're getting, the things that they need to feel comfortable and safe and, stay motivated to continue to do great work. And I think that's my primary focus as we move forward to make sure that the team is in a good place and they want to stay, quite frankly.
Yeah, listen, I think, even if you hop on social media, it doesn't matter what platform, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, mental health, wellness, well-being, workplace wellness, right? All these hashtags and conversations that are taking place. I agree with you that the next 6 months, a lot of organizations are redefining what it means to work, how they need to take care of their employees. And, I can speak, you and I have worked a few times and I've seen your team. You lead a mighty team, a mighty large team, but great team. And I think what's, interesting for me to understand too is as a marketing leader yourself, what are the expectations you have of yourself? Right, I know that it's, making sure your team is okay, but what are the expectations you have on yourself as a leader, and then what do you want most for your employees?
Yeah, that's a great one, Jen. I think for me, I mean, this industry, I mean, the biggest adjustment for me, right, is the level of risk, right? And just by nature, the industry and insurance and assistance, it's a very risk adverse
Yeah.
kind of industry, right? And I think for me coming into this, I come from a very different, especially having come from, a sports management and sports marketing organization, right? I mean, anything goes, right? So there was for me this kind of shift a little bit of kind of getting the team comfortable with taking some more risk, right? And in anything, quite frankly, right? Risk in the campaigns that you do, risk in trying new things, and being okay with that, right? And being okay if it doesn't work, that's okay. So for me coming in here as a leader, that's the thing that I want to impress on the team, the most is like, let's take some risk, a little bit more and be okay with that. And the second thing I'd say is in that, and that's kind of with that in the back of your mind, telling some of these stories that we have. And I'll share a quick story. This is kind of a funny one, being radically transparent here. Again, right? You might want to note this down, guys, because this is a fun one. If you want to listen in here now. But so when I joined International SOS, like about a month in, all the senior leaders, they make you sit down with the two founders.
Okay.
So I sit down with them. I'm brand, a month in, and I wasn't prepped by any of of the leadership team. They were just like, I think it was like this rite of passage in a way, right? So I sit down with him, and he's like, "Oh, so you're the new marketing guy I've heard so much about, and this is great, wonderful, welcome. Now tell me what's wrong with my business." Like, this is the owner of the company, right? Like right in 5 minutes into the conversation, right? And I'm like, so I respond, and I heard he had a good sense of humor, right? So I respond, "Well, how much time do we have?" Right? And he's like, "Oh, he chuckles a bit." And I said, "Well, no, seriously, though." I said, "I will share my story with you," right? And I said, I shared how I had never heard of the company before. And, despite that, I still decided to join. And, here I am. But Jen, I immediately on the onboarding, a week in, you go down and you sit in the assistance center. Like you have to do that, right? As part of your onboarding. And so I went down into the Philadelphia Assistance Center, and you go 7 o'clock in the morning because that's when they do this, like what's called transfer, right? Or transmission. And what they do is it's the staff and all of our doctors and nurses who are working at night, they hand over all of the case studies to the incoming folks in the morning that are on the day shift, right? And so you literally sit there and they hand and talk about all the cases that they're working and hand them over. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and like literally I'm getting like my hair is standing up on my arms, and I'm getting goosebumps. Like it was so fascinating, like the work that these guys are doing, and the doctors and nurses coordinating, these missions and evacuations and like work. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the heartbeat of this company. And this is what we're doing. And I'm like, how does nobody know this? And so I said, that is your problem. We don't tell enough of those stories. So, I'm here, and my focus with the team is to, in fact, tell more of those stories. And whether that's, on social, whether that's, in our material and our marketing, or what we do, but that I believe is what is our differentiator, because no one else can do it in our space.
Yeah, I think, and there's a lot of talk, right? Like if we're even in post COVID, around, storytelling and being a great storyteller. When you were in that assistance center and you're hearing these stories for the first time and you were sharing, like, oh my God, like what was going through your head first, I guess, as a marketer, of like, how are you going to tell that story? Or like, what's the right way to tell this story?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, well, and that's where the level of risk comes in, right? Because when I immediately, like the light bulbs, I was like, oh my God, we have to like, let's shout this from the rooftops, right? This is unbelievable. And, so I went to the team and they're like, oh, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean we can't do that? Like, why? Like, we can do anything. And, so it was shifting kind of the mindset, right? And it was a little bit of like, well, We got to be careful. And I'm like, look, we don't have to say who it is, right? You don't have to, we can anonymize. Like, there's all sorts of different ways, guys, that we can get around it. So we started really, going after some of those things, a little bit more, I'd say focused, right? And a lot more with intent and deliberately trying to go down that road. So, look, we strike out sometimes, right? You can't tell everything. You have to obviously adhere to, all of your regulations.
I'm gonna say you guys are pretty regulated, so I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
you've got a lot of hoops to jump through to tell
Yeah,
you.
and so look, you gotta build your pipeline up, right? I mean, hey, which ones can you go after? Maybe you get some client approval, maybe you don't, right? So those that you don't, then can you do it a different way? Is there another way to tell it? And so, but it's really what I'd say, dedicating yourself to it and really saying this is what we want to do, and then figuring out the best way that you can do it as a team. And I think we've had some good success there,
So
frankly.
essentially, what you're saying is there's never a dull moment, which equals you probably don't get much sleep. So with that, I actually want to shift the conversation a moment because I know you and I had a conversation a while back about influencers. And when I think about you talking about risk, especially in a heavily regulated industry, in the B2B world in general, this is like a term that I feel is like micro influencing influencers. It's a term that's becoming more known, but in practice it's not really, I don't know if it's being done well, where it's being done well, we can get into that. But I know that you're the brains behind a pretty creative and interesting insurance influencer campaign, and I was hoping that maybe you'd be able to share with us a little bit about what that campaign even is and how do you go about understanding, polling, finding, reaching out to influencers, and talk us through even how you came up with this idea because it's outrageously awesome.
Well, thank you. We're still early stages, right? And it's,
Okay.
I like, I think and I appreciate that. I think it's like trying again to push the envelope a little bit and try and take a little bit of risk. I mean, where I came from, I mean, we did this all the time, right? And it's so natural, obviously, within even Verizon. I mean, we had a very, when I got there, we implemented a very focused influencer campaign, right? Where we would have regular people talk about, our products and solutions, right? It's just what you did. It was easy to do. So I'm like, well, why can't we do it, here, right? And we have a pretty cool solution. It's a personal travel coverage membership that is a part of our larger offering. So if you're a client of ours, we also offer personal travel insurance as well to cover you for medical evacuations and also pre-trip and insurance cancellation, trip cancellation
Which
as
is
well. So I
very
mean,
timely right now.
very timely, right? So as we're seeing travel, especially domestic travel, start to rebound, and it is. We've looked at our own data of our, own clients who see their own travelers going. It's picking up, and it's been a lot easier in the U.S. given our quick advances with the vaccine, but it's starting to ramp up, and we were like, man, this is a great opportunity here to really showcase this thing. So we were batting around some ideas one day. I'm like, well, guys, what if we just showcased like people that were starting to travel and we just gave them our insurance? Like we give them that coverage, and in exchange, classic quid pro quo and a wonderful influencer approach, like have them, do some activity for us and document and show how we help, travelers do that. And so
Doing that through, because when I think influencer, I mean, truth be told, I always think like Kim Kardashian, or you're thinking like, kind of the way that B2C
yeah,
is thing. So I'm like picturing this campaign, like, are you going to have CMOs and CEOs traveling and like snapping selfies on their airplane and like like is that kind of the
yeah.
like, is that the vision? Like how are you going to have these influencers tell their story that they're using your insurance on different channels? Like, what does that mean for you?
So I'd say this, right? And I think you and I would agree on this, right? That, everyone's personal brand is just as important as a company's brand as well, right? So it would be naive of me to sit and go, hey, Mr. Influencer, however big you are, can you please, especially for free or in exchange for, some coverage here, can you please post this wonderful thing of an International SOS shirt or whatever? Never going to happen, right? But right, if you can actually have them do natural to their own brand, that's on brand for them,
Hmm.
showcase, or whether it's within their regular feed, or even in some of their stories on whatever platforms they have, be able to show the benefit that our company provides them in a natural way that's on brand for them, is
Hmm.
where our head is at and what I'm looking for them to do. So we're really down market when you talk about influencers, right? The micro is what you're talking about. Like I'm looking for the 3 to 5,000 person following who is maybe on that cusp of like maybe getting there, and they're willing, and they see the value in their travels for having the service that we provide. And that's who we're targeting. And we've had some great success. We're being very respectful and slow rolling in the way that we're doing it. We're engaging with them. First, we're being very mindful to not just launch in and be like, "Do you want to collab?" Which is so makes me cringe.
Yeah.
So we've gotten a couple of people on board, a good list that they're willing, and we want to get around 20 to 25 is our target, and we're about halfway there of getting the group that we need to be able to go out and launch with it. So I'm excited, and I think it's going to be one that's going to be pretty natural, and it feels pretty organic, which I think is important as well.
I'm telling you, when you shared with me this idea in its infancy, I thought this was phenomenal. And I think we might have to have you back in a few months' time, or, end of Q4,
Yeah.
and understand the results of this campaign, because I think it's really unique, and I love it that it really goes hand in hand with what you were saying earlier about the need to take risks, the need to push the envelope, even as B2B marketers, who we all have kind of that stereotypical, we're boring, or what we do is boring, and I think we need to change that up. One thing I want to ask you, just as you were speaking about this, it popped into my head. You started off at Verizon, and then you were with the Devils, and now International SOS. And at the end of the day, where do you go to stay updated in terms of publications, or what are you reading that, right, to keep, right, because literally our field is constantly changing and super dynamic. How are you staying up to date, and what are, if you could give like one or two publications that you're religiously following, or influencers?
Yeah, no, that's a great one. And I honestly, Jen, I struggle with that a bit. I do, because there's so many different places to get information, especially now. And, so I think what I try to do is think of it in two lanes. And, one is the industry specific stuff,
Yeah.
to keep up with what's going on. And that's super important for me, not having been in this industry, making sure that I understand, the next insight. So, I'm doing a couple of things there. One, I follow a lot of our, relevant publications out there. There's a lot out there, BTN.
PTN. Okay.
I follow our associations, your GBTAs, that's your Global Business Traveler Association. So a lot of your local like trades and those things digitally, I'll make sure that I keep those in my feed there. And then the other lane is really just on the side of just information, and really generally what's what people are saying, and I just use social for that. I mean, I'm a huge Twitter guy. I'm not as active on it as much, because I found in this space it's not as popular. LinkedIn is the place that a lot of our clients and the people who are the buyers and decision makers are really on LinkedIn. And that's a B2B general theme, right? So, but I'll use LinkedIn. I follow a couple of our clients. Our key clients. I'm all connected with those. Look at what they're talking about, see the things that are of interest to them, and then really use that to shape. And then the last thing, really in that same lane though, is we try to get feedback from our clients. I mean, I think you can't really impress enough the importance of really listening to what your clients have to say. And so we have pretty set ways to do that. We have these client advisory boards, which I think are really, we're dialed into it, and really look to get some of that real-time feedback. And I think that's really helpful in shaping kind of what we want to do as well.
Absolutely. I'm such a sucker for client advisory boards.
Yeah.
So in the interest of time of our episodes, I have two questions. I'll call it a question and a half.
Okay.
And I'm gonna shoot it over now. I was thinking, you're all smiles. Anyone who's watching, us on YouTube right now, you can see Rick smiling. Anyone listening in, I'm sure you can feel his enthusiasm. And your success is just, honestly, it's admirable. I want to ask if we can take a step back, right? Because failure is what I've learned throughout my career is such an inevitable part of success. And I know that in the time of a failure, right, you're probably not thinking that. But I was wondering if you could share with us maybe a time in your life or a moment where it seemed like a complete failure or super risky and you thought you blew it. But in actuality, it actually helped get you to be the marketer you are today.
God, there's so many of them. Which one do I choose? Yeah, and that's a great one. I I think the one that comes to mind is when back in my Verizon days, it's probably 10 years ago or so, but it was when I just came to the digital team, and I was kind of in charge of social strategy and social content, there. And the woman who I worked for, which by the way, I still talk to her today, and she's a great mentor of mine. I just was tasked like, hey, we need to launch kind of a feature set of the product that we had. And she said, go get, some social campaign and content there. So I went out all on my own. It was my big project. I found this cheap agency that can, do it. I briefed them in quickly, and I let them go. And then I said, just bring it back to me in like a month, whatever it is. I mean, they came back
Oh, no.
and reviewed the 3 pieces of video content that they created. And I still have them on my laptop today. They never saw the light of day though, Jen. This is where I was laughing with my manager, my previous manager. I literally just showed her a couple of weeks ago these videos because I would have been thrown out of there so quick because they were so bad and they were so like over the top, like off brand, and that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get fired. Like I am gonna get fired. So
I've
I
so been
my
there.
oh my God. And like, I'll show you these sometime. I mean, you will just flip. I can't even describe on this podcast or the video what they were. They're that bad. But the key take, there were so many lessons from that were so valuable to me though. I mean, everything from managing a project to like the right way to brief a project in, right? The way to get feedback, the way to actually, touch base and like too much rope, not enough, right? How do you, right people to hire? How do you, the gambit, just like straight up project management thing and how to be effective, right? Overall. And I never forget that. And I always check myself on that when you're doing some of these projects. And I just remember that to this day. And it was the best lesson, I think, in that and how to properly, really handle projects that way. So
I love it. And I love that it's on your desktop for a reminder every single day if you need it, what not to do and what to do better. I think that's fantastic.
it's in a
Um,
special not open folder. So I'll share it.
there you go. There you go. So listen, we know that you have your do not open folder. We know that you were not the man behind the "Can you hear me" Verizon commercial, but you did some great work there. What's one thing that you can share with us that we can't learn from your LinkedIn profile, or if we throw your name into Google?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I think LinkedIn, right? I try to adhere to the intent of the platform. I try to stay pretty professional and stay locked in, with things that are happening, in my industry and at the job and all of that. So,
And you do
but
it
what
well.
I
I have to say, I
well,
have to chime in. You do it well. If anyone listening in is looking for an interesting LinkedIn connection to follow, I would
yeah,
definitely recommend adding Rick to your network because your posts, you're interesting and
yeah.
you're insightful and funny. So I
Well,
would definitely recommend a follow.
yeah, I follow the third kind of content strategy, right? Personal on that one. But what you won't get out of my LinkedIn, which is, my true why and what it's all about for me is my family. And, I am fortunate enough. I met my wife in college, and she is she's it, and I'll be married 23 years coming this July.
Oh,
I don't,
congratulations.
maybe I look that young, I don't know, but hopefully I do still. But we got married right out of college, and she is my everything, and we are blessed with two daughters who one is in college now and just finished her freshman year, and then another one who's close to finishing up high school, and they're my everything. And
Aw.
yeah, you don't see me talk about that really on my LinkedIn, but
Are they all on your
they're
cell phone plan? And do you still have Verizon?
I do, as a matter of fact, still have Verizon. They are on my cell phone. I apologize to my mom. I finally kicked her off of our plan, so
Sorry,
what are
Mom.
you gonna do? Sorry, mom. Apologies.
There
So,
you go. Listen, Rick, this was fantastic. I know a lot of us listening in probably will have follow-up questions. What's the best place if anybody wants to learn more about International SOS, talk marketing? Where can we connect with you? Where do you prefer?
yeah, so I mean, internationalsos.com is our site. I mean, check it out there. Definitely, give me a follow on and connect on LinkedIn. That's a great place to find me. I'm super responsive there. And I won't give you my phone number for fear that I'll get posted on a bathroom wall, but connect with me on LinkedIn there, and I'm happy to follow up and have further discussion.
Amazing.
And this was great. I had a blast, and you're something special. I think this show's pretty cool too. So I appreciate the time.
Awesome, Rick. We had a blast. We can't wait to have you back to talk about that influencer campaign.
Good stuff.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.